Welcome back to Beyond the Bottom Line. I'm your host, Bert Miller, and I'm excited to kick off season 3 with a guest who represents one of the most iconic global brands in beverage. On today's show, we have the Coca-Cola Beverage Company's Global Chief People Officer, Lisa Chang. And before we start, let's just give a little bit of background on Lisa, and I'm going to have to take a look at this. As Lisa oversees all the global talent and strategies that she and her team have done, and they certainly have done a great job ensuring as they win talent, they've been creating a really safe place and a great place for their team to thrive. And in addition, Lisa serves on many boards and advisory committees, including the Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation and so much more. Welcome to the show, Lisa.
Thank you, Bert. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. So your efforts have been validated. I was in New York and saw you in New York as the Coca-Cola Beverage Company won the 2023 Hunt Scanlon's Culture of Excellence Award. Talk a little bit about that and what went into that, and why do you think you separated yourself from the pack?
Yes, thank you for that. That seems like it was so long ago already. So we were very fortunate to be named the winner of this past year's Hunt Scanlon Culture Award. And the focus on that really is about our purpose and about finding ways to ensure that in everything that we do, our culture is prevalent, whether it's a set of guiding principles, whether it's core values for our leadership, or whether growth behaviors for our employees. And I think the important part of what set us apart is the leadership commitment that we have from the top of the importance of culture and the fact that it's not just a nice to have, but it really has become the guiding light for most organizations. A lot of that came through over the last few years with all the crises that we've had to navigate, and the companies that have come out on top are the ones that have stuck true to their core values and their principles. And I think Coca-Cola definitely did that. We are very fortunate to have a very long history of being a company that serves the communities that we live and our customers. And I think, again, through the last few years, by leaning in on culture and principles and having our leaders espouse those values, that's really what drove us through the pandemic and has helped us come out on top.
Well, a couple of things you said. Number one, it's very intentional. It comes with a purpose, and it starts with the leadership. So in order for that to cascade through the organization, certainly it takes the executive offices and their intentional commitment to really develop that culture. And so you guys have done a wonderful job with that. So congratulations on that award again. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. So today we're going to spend some time talking about resilient leadership, innovation, transformation, and part of the innovation component can be product development, but also how you guys are really leaning into tech as well, and generative AI, those type of things. So we'll talk a little bit about that, values and purpose, which you've already mentioned. And of course, you guys are continuing to be very innovative in terms of helping drive sustainable future for as a model type of company. So let's talk a little bit about that. Resilient leadership strategies that you guys have developed and now you've implemented at Coca-Cola. How have you been able to navigate all that organizational change through the size of your organization? Because I think that's really important, because many times things become siloed in organizations, and you guys have done a terrific job taking what your intentions are and cascading that through the organization. How have you done that so well?
Yes. Really what we've done is, again, focused leadership. So when James Quincy, our now chairman and CEO, took over a few years ago, he was very intentional about being clear with the organization about the journey we were going to go on. And it was a journey of transformation. So I think step one was just articulating the strategy and being really clear with people about where we were headed. And when he did that, we did a couple of things. We made it pretty clear that this is the direction of travel, that it was going to be hard work, and that it would involve change. And while we weren't specific about the details of what that meant, we tried to prepare people mentally and psychologically for the fact that, this wasn't going to be business as usual every single day. And so we gave people options and choices along the way to make the decision on whether they were up for the challenge. And transparently, we went through a couple of reorgs that included allowing people to opt out. we gave some voluntary packages and said to folks, look, this is the hard road we're going to take. We are very confident that this is going to take us to a better place, but we also realize that some of you may not have signed up for this. So let's be clear about that. I think that helped us separate, I think, the people who had the stamina for the change and the people who maybe weren't as interested in that kind of an organization. So that was something that we did. Secondly, we brought in that next layer of leadership. So we have an executive leadership team, and then we have sort of that next layer down that really runs the organization from a people standpoint. We brought them all into a community. It was about 230 of them. And we, on a weekly basis, had calls with them to let them know how the journey was unfolding and where we would need their help and their leadership and what the expectations were for them to lead from the front. And that really helped us get this message from the top down into the organization so that people could feel closer to what the change was that was happening. And then thirdly, we really focused in on the opportunity. And we tried to, and I know we'll talk more about the resiliency piece of it, we tried to focus on the change is not bad. Change is actually opportunity, change is growth, change is exciting. And we tried to shift that paradigm away from fear into excitement and energy. And by doing so, I think we gave people a vision towards what the future could be like and how they could participate.
Well, that's a lesson for others that are listening out there and other leaders and companies. The first thing and foremost, before Lisa even mentioned opportunity, was James providing really the vision and the lens into the future in a very transparent way and helping people really understand factually what the journey was going to be like. And certainly that made everybody's job a lot easier in terms of making the tough decisions and communicating and allowing you to transform over that period of time. That is fantastic. Now, the second layer of leadership, the 230, how did you go about building that team? Because that, to your point, that's the critical lever in your organization, I believe, for that vision to come to life. So how did you go about doing that? And 230, that's quite a few folks.
Yeah. So in our previous structure, we had sort of that second layer of leadership. But when we restructured our organization, we basically went through an organizational change that allowed us to create like organizations. So imagine we're in 200 countries. We operate in all different markets around the world in a very different way. And we had business units that kind of did a lot of different things independently. We tried to create size and scale by saying, look, there are certain ways that we should go to market that are proven to generate more success for us. And so we wanted to create models. So we actually create model organizational structures. We put those in the organization. We sort of reorganized ourselves into a more efficient model. We created a services organization that would streamline back of house for HR, payroll, finance, marketing services, where again, we could replicate, duplicate, and scale our processes. And then we, doubled down on sort of the centers of expertise, the ones like the people function that drives strategy. So we created this whole model. In doing so, we knew we had to restack our leadership team. And we did that very intentionally. Our executive team, I would say we hand appointed all 230 people through the lens of a couple things. One was the leadership model. So we created a new leadership model that really only had three components. And it was, as a leader, you need to be the model, which is you have to lead by example. The second one is you have to set the agenda. You have to be able to set clear priorities, expectations, and metrics so people know what they're doing and how they're measured. And the third is you have to invest in people and help them be their best selves. So this was about leaders that would help the organization create better people and better leaders, not about self-serving leaders, but about, again, creating sustainability in our people functions. So with that leadership criteria, we actually went in and hand appointed people person by person for all the different roles and regions. We looked at exchanging talent from different parts of the world into newly generated positions. But I would say that aside from functional skills, which were important, those leadership behaviors actually helped us decide who was up for the challenge.
Yeah, it's amazing how the intangibles come into play so often in leadership, beyond just the functional skills. So you've done a great job outlining how your organization and leadership has really had the impact on the growth and transformation of the organization. and such an influence in what you guys are currently doing today. We talked a little bit at the beginning about resilient leadership, and what does that mean to the Coca-Cola Company? What's your definition of that, and how does that come into play? And if I work for the Coca-Cola Company, how do I see and feel and become part of that and make part of my connective tissue as well?
Yeah, I think for us, resilient leadership is the ability to learn from, quote, mistakes and failures and overcome obstacles that come in the way so that you learn and you get better. We couple that with the growth mindset, which we think is really important. And as we went through this process, our focus was on ensuring that we also have another growth behavior called iterative progress over perfection. So I think we couple all those together and we try to create a psychologically safe environment for people to test and learn along the way. Look, we've been around 137 years. At some point you look in from the outside and you go, I mean, how hard could it be, right? I mean, you're selling, a Coca-Cola product. It's gotten a lot more complex and we've gotten better experimenting, but we've also had to create an environment where people feel safe experimenting, and that builds in resiliency, right? So, just to bring up a flash from our past, there was this thing called New Coke that a lot of people will remember. It was not a great outcome for us at the time. And since that time, we probably developed a more conservative approach to innovation and iteration because that was not a great situation. But I think over time, we have learned vastly from that. And we've learned that it wasn't about the new Coke itself. It was about how we went about doing it and what did we learn from that, right? So we're trying to, again, help people understand that we're not always going to get it perfect. So you don't penalize someone for making, quote, a mistake, but you try to make sure that they learn from it and that they move forward. And so we've really tried to create an environment where people can see that, and that resiliency is about the ability to bounce back when you face adversity. We talk a bit about the different types of failure, and I'm sure you're familiar with Amy Edmondson from Harvard. She talks a bit about the different types of failure. So we really try to help people understand that, all failure is not created equal, right? There's a type of failure that happens because you make mistakes. And there's a type of failure that happens that actually leads to good outcomes because you wouldn't have known what you found out if you didn't try it, right? And so how do we make sure that people understand that failure is a normal part of learning and growing and innovating, and you have to do that in order to overcome. But the most important part is overcoming that failure, learning from it, and moving forward. So that's how we're trying to build in the engine of resiliency in our people, is to see that as challenges come towards you, it's about how you handle it and what you learn from it, as opposed to specifically the outcome that happened at the time.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And we all do remember that moment of the new Coke. And I think you've done a great job outlining how you guys have used resilient leadership because, as I take a look at your organization, you have become better and stronger and you become more intentional. And so that moment made you guys take a step back as an organization, and certainly the Coca-Cola Beverage Company has gotten better. So innovation, let's talk a little bit about innovation, the approach that Coca-Cola has taken and what you guys have done to evolve the business, as well as, including your team members. And, one of the things we talked about, offline was generative AI and how you've adopted that, not just as a technology, but as a technology to not necessarily replace your talent, but how your talent can work with the technology to make you guys more efficient. You want to go into that?
Sure. Let me hit on innovation for a second first, which is to your point and carrying over from the last thought about product innovation. We definitely have found better ways to innovate on our products with a very key component in mind, which is permission from the consumers. Obviously, a big part of this is, can we go to places where consumers are comfortable with us taking the brand? And so you started to see some of the things that we've done, including alcohol, where we've introduced Jack and Coke, or Topo Chico hard seltzers, or Fresca and vodka. There are some things that we're doing where we're taking brands that people know well, and by the way, they're already mixing them, and we've just combined them to make them more convenient for them. So I think what we've learned there is what we're really great at is creating core brands. And so we have to protect those brands, but we can complement them as opposed to replace them. So that's a little bit of our strategy, and we can talk a bit more about that. So I think we're learning a little bit. We're also doing things like Coke Creations, which is really about the marketing platform of introducing Coca-Cola products to a new generation of consumers. And we're using things like AI and social media and some of the gaming and some of the other things to kind of attract consumers to that category. And we're doing innovative flavors. A lot of the flavors that I personally don't resonate with me, but I've been reminded many times I'm not the target demo, so I have to sort of get over that. But there are some things that we're doing to introduce new flavors that, again, allow us to introduce new consumers. On the generative AI front and technology, yeah, absolutely. We are a big believer that technology and humans must go hand in hand, that there isn't a replacement strategy here, that it's really how do we augment and make humans more productive in what they do well. So humans are really great at critical thinking. We're good at building relationships. We're good at collaboration. We're good at innovating. Those are things that machines can't do unless someone has programmed them to do it. So how can we take the technology and take away some of the things that are sort of rote responsibilities and free up capacity and time for us to do other things? I mean, I think about so many of the advancements that have happened to the workplace since you and I entered the workforce. I mean, in the early days, we didn't have emails. We barely had word processors. And I remember typing memos and sending them through interoffice mail. And at the time, it's what we did. But now you look back and you go, God, that was highly inefficient, right?
Absolutely.
So there are things like that we're trying to work on. We have tested a few things on the marketing front with generative AI, where we can actually create campaigns through generative AI that are actually really, really good, spot on. So we're playing around with that. In-house on the HR side, we've actually deployed some generative AI technology around our HR help. So how do I, as an employee, get information on my employment at Coca-Cola? I have questions about my benefits. I have questions about performance reviews. We have call centers around the world that tend to our thousands of employees. We're now putting in a chat feature that allows employees to go in and ask the chat feature a question, and the chat will source the answer for you in a matter of seconds. So we're trying to find ways to do that, to, again, make it easier for people to access information and go about doing their work, and free up capacity for people that were otherwise answering phones to do other things like innovate on new technologies that can help us be more productive in the future.
No, that's fantastic on both fronts. In terms of innovation and product development, it's been fantastic in what you guys have done. It's not just the coloring in soda water any longer. You guys have certainly ventured in multitude of categories and done it very well. And the adjacencies of the products have been, in the way you've introduced them, have been fantastic. Coming forward with the generative AI and the way that you guys are approaching it as it relates to enhancing and becoming more efficient with your talent versus just, absolutely replacing talent, having the AI do other jobs. Take me through the process of your current talent and how you're going about upskilling them and bringing them along, which is great for their own career development, into other roles that as they continue to develop enough skill.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I mean, we just had a panel on AI with our system partners to talk about it. And the first thing that we're trying to do, Bert, is just get people comfortable with it. There's a fear of the unknown. So very quickly, and hats off to our technology teams, we made available to all of our employees the chat GPT functionality, within our firewalls to protect our own data. But we actually said to people, go experiment. Go see what you can do with it. Ask it questions that might help you with your day job, but also ask it other things to learn. So we're giving people access freely to allow them to learn from it. That's, counter to some other places that have actually made it, not accessible and have said you can't use it. We're doing the opposite. We know that there are some challenges sometimes. It's interesting. We're starting to see things that suddenly sound very scripted, and we're like, did this person write that, or did chat write it, right? And so we're trying to learn as much as we can, including, as I said, encouraging people to learn from it. Go in, play around with it, see what you can get, iterate with it, ask it more prompts, see what happens. So I think that's step one is don't be afraid of it. We're trying to learn. The second thing we're trying to do is really, again, asking people to think more broadly about how do you see this helping you with your day-to-day job? I mean, many times, I'll just sit there and if I have something I need to do, I'll just put a prompt in and see what it says as a thought starter. I don't use everything it says, but it kind of kicks off a thought stream in my head that is like a brainstorming session. So I think it's important that organizations embrace the technology from a skills perspective and that we give people a path towards, okay, well, if this takes over my job, then what will I be doing? And it's our job to provide the and then what, right? So we're trying to show people, again, you can get greater experiences by being involved in projects on different things. We can upskill people to do things outside of what they're currently doing. So can we take people from the help desk and transfer their skills and capabilities into a customer service role, customer facing role, or into another area of the business? But providing them with not the, well, your job's going away and we don't know what that means, but kind of like, we know things are going to change, but so too is our business. And as you said, we're emerging into many categories today. In addition to the alcohol and Coke creations we talked about, we're now in the coffee business, we're in the juice business, we're in the dairy business. And so we're really trying to give people a path towards what it might look like if they were doing something different than what they're doing today.
I love that. I love it in many ways. Number one, you're embracing what is inevitable, and you're doing it in a way that you're helping your people. So in essence, the team members' skills are going to continue to get better, and their career is they're going to develop versus other companies who may not be embracing this, that their folks will be susceptible to the inevitable. Especially when I love the way you use the term. It's almost like, the old days we'd have old days, like last year, we go in a room and brainstorm on a whiteboard, and now we're using AI to, basically do whiteboarding through AI. The other thing is, I think winning companies always take the path less traveled, or certainly they tend to not always follow what's going on, but they definitely assess, I should say, and many times take the road less traveled. That's what makes Coca-Cola just a terrific company. All right, so values and purpose. You mentioned that early when we got started, the intentional piece around values and purpose of the organization. And you can probably, as our listeners can, see as you've been able to explain how your organization has been innovative, developing products, using generative AI, embracing things of that nature. That leadership and values and purpose, you guys are living that every day, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we are. It's, as I said, it's our North Star. It helps us stay focused, and it also helps us sustain the history of the company. We talk a lot about honoring the past, but not being beholden to it. So that's, I think, an important balance for us, is recognizing the things that have made us who we are, but not necessarily being stuck in time. Robert Woodruff was our former chairman and CEO, and he talks about how the future belongs to the discontented. And so our CEO, James, used that a lot to remind us that we can't rest on our laurels and we can't get too comfortable. We have to be ready to disrupt ourselves before someone else disrupts us. And so I think that mindset is really important.
Absolutely. And we talked about the multitude of categories you guys are getting into, and this continuing process down the road, utilizing those values and certainly the purpose of the organization. I think also the transparency through the reorganization and the journey that James and the executive team set out was fantastic. And it's allowing you very easily to get into these other categories because you have a playbook. Thinking a little bit about that, a category that is exploding is obviously the RTDs. Talk to me about the ready-to-drink category, both malt and juices and spirits and the whole nine yards. So how are you going to play in the RTD category, an exploding category, as I mentioned, that represents almost $11 billion? And it's come on the scene just in the last few years. So how's the Coca-Cola Beverage Company plan on playing in that category?
Yeah. So one of the things that we try to do is look at the opportunity set. And it was really compelling when we sort of looked at the current state of consumption patterns in the world versus where people buy our products. And there's a lot of headroom because if you think about the products or beverages that people drink, the Coca-Cola portfolio fills up some of it, but there's a lot more opportunity. That's why, we evolved our strategy to a beverages for life strategy, which means we want to have beverages for every day part that a consumer might have, whether it's coffee in the morning to juice or, sodas in the afternoon, an energy drink, hydration for after a workout, functional beverages that improve focus in the mind, those types of things. So I think the strategy on our ready to drink is really going to where the consumers are and recognizing that convenience is extremely important to people these days. That's why the RTD alcohol business, I think, is seeing an uptick. Is it's just convenient for people to be able to get that beverage in the can instead of having to carry, the soda along with the, mixers along with the other things. So you think tailgates, you think picnics, you think ball games and other things like that. We're meeting the consumers where they are. And so RTD has allowed us to play in that space in a bigger way. And also from a convenience standpoint, I think during the pandemic, we learned the importance of RTD because so many of our food outlets and customers were closed. And so we have a big fountain business here in the US that really went idle for a significant period of time. And RTD was the way that we went to the consumers. So I think you see the shifting pattern. It's a focus on making sure that we're always meeting that consumer where they are and that we can put our products within what we like to say an arm's reach.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, the other thing, and when I think of the Coca-Cola beverage company and what you guys are doing, and just recently, we're not going to get deep into this because it's just a recent topic, but I do love the idea that not just Coca-Cola only produce the refreshing, beautiful soda that we know around the world as Coca-Cola and various other brands and categories, but the fact that you guys are thinking about the planet. Water is so incredibly important to the development and product production. And I think James just came out of a conference where by 2030, Coca-Cola wants to be, have all their water in a very secure and reusable environment. Again, we don't have to go deep, but it's just, it's just representative of the values and purpose and North Star and that brand. It goes across all facets of your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it again goes back to our core and our purpose, which is to refresh the world and make a difference. We added the make a difference, interestingly, at the end of 2019, when we went back to revisit what our purpose was. It's always been to refresh the world. And when we started that purpose statement years ago, it was really a very tangible refresh in terms of refreshing the palate for beverages. Refresh now in our world means a lot of things. It's refreshing the mind, the body, the spirit, the communities. And then we added the make a difference because our license to operate is predicated on being a socially responsible company. And so the water replenishment, our circular economy, doing business in the right way in countries around the world, and all of that is a really, really important part of our value system because people know us. The benefit is we are such a ubiquitous brand. The challenge is we're a ubiquitous brand. And so anytime anything can go wrong, people will look to us to say, hey, what are they doing? So we take that responsibility very seriously. We know that it's a privilege to be in that mindset. And so some of the work that we're doing around water and around the circular economy, led by B. Perez, our head of PACS and sustainability, is a very, very important tenet of our strategy.
Yeah, we talked earlier about how this year is flying by, and I don't think the pace of life is going to get any slower from this point forward. And Coca-Cola Company has certainly built an incredible foundation that's allowing you these certain fundamentals and principles and that you put in place that as we continue to move at light speed, you're able to adapt, and that agility is going to allow for you to continue success and certainly be a model for others to follow. Before we close out here, there's some things that you said that I just absolutely love that I want to make sure I don't forget. And that's number one, early on, talking about the North Star, providing that lens to the future, purpose, intention. And I love the fact that you guys added make a difference. That is so very important. So I really do appreciate that, Lisa, and appreciate your time as well. anything you'd like to add to that particular point, and then we'll kind of sign out.
Yeah, I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you. It's great to be able to talk about not only the work that we're doing, but importantly, the work that we think all companies should be looking at. The last few years have been so difficult for all of us, but I think the importance of companies with values is more important now than it's ever been. And so we do a lot of the things that we do, not because it's just part of the core values, but because it's the right thing to do. And we think that building better economies around the world overall is predicated on having companies with that type of value system. So we pride ourselves in the work that we do. We're eager to have others do the same and share in our likeness. And we aspire to be like other companies that do good in the world. And just appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Coca-Cola story. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think the last few years, as difficult as they have been and what's going on, it's going to, I believe, from a resiliency perspective, we're going to be a lot better because of companies like the Coca-Cola Beverage Company. So Lisa, thank you for being on the show once again. And I appreciate being on Beyond the Bottom Line with Bert Miller. It's been a real pleasure having you on here. And I look forward to our paths crossing again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bert.
Till next time, guys, it's Bert Miller with Beyond the Bottom Line. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back to you later. Thank you.